Oh, I'm so relieved to see you.
Why? Oh goodness.
I
Hope,
feel like this is just like a public service announcement. I've been wanting to talk to you for, I always want to talk to you.
okay.
I just don't,
Well,
a friend of mine just
anytime,
asked me,
Molly.
she,
It's so fun to talk with you.
I know,
So
I agree. My friend of mine just
anytime.
asked me all these questions if I wanted to go on her podcast and talk about parenting and kids and food. I was like, I think I should just call Michael Goran. Like, I don't, that's who I'm talking to about it anyway. Hi,
Hmm.
I'm so happy to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Yep, surviving,
Yeah,
doing well. I
good.
got one of my. I mean, my kicked out of my office because my daughter's sick and her bedroom's right next to it. So she's I think she's just got a bad flu so
Ugh,
far, COVID
yeah.
negative.
Welcome to
But
the world. So,
exactly.
want to talk all things holidays and kids. I was having this other thought today, like all things holidays, kids, grandkids, godkids, but also like inner child for those the listening who maybe didn't get well parented when it came to food. And even though we're filming this in or recording this rather in November, I actually wanted to start with Halloween and just giving your breadth of experience and research and knowledge about all of this. I want to get right into your thoughts on, hey, wait, oh, wait, one more thing I have to say. You know me. I was like, somebody had this great post and she was like, you know, we start in January when we're like coming off of the binge. And then it's February and it's Valentine's Day and there's chocolates. And then before you know it, I mean, for me, like it's Passover. Passover is like so chocolate heavy. Then it's
Mm,
Easter and you have your like Easter candy.
mm.
And then it's May and there's graduations and all of the cake and the this and the that. And then it's June and then it's ice cream and then, and then it's September and then it's October and then it's back to school and parties for that. And then it's October and it's Halloween. So this idea, honestly, that it's just a treat is a little bit of a delusion, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is where the whole premise of the book came. Sugarproof. It's basically how do you navigate through that overwhelming sugar saturated food environment that we're expected to thrive in and our kids are expected to thrive in. And not to say that our solution is not to deprive anybody of that, but it's like, how do you do it in a healthy way?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and that's kind of our guiding principle.
It's my
Because
favorite part of your book, actually, is that
mm,
it's not making a suggestion like my book is making a suggestion that maybe you just need to have a full stop breakup, which my book is not for children. It's not for
mm.
children. Um,
We
so
have such a hard time getting that message across. Even me personally, like whenever I go out to dinner or over to friends' house, they're like, "Oh my God, here comes
uh,
Michael, Sugarproof. Take the sugar away." And I'm like, "No, like that's not
yeah,
my message. My message is
no,
that how what's a way to enjoy that in a more healthy way.
yeah.
So
And I
I can't shake that up. I need your advice on that. Like, how
oh
do I
my
shake
God.
off
I
that?
honestly, I think if you and I walked into a dinner party, they'd all run out. I had the same exact. Someone's like,
Yeah,
are you watching what I eat? I'm like, are you
right.
paying me? Like, what? Like, no. And also, in my work, like, I'm like, I don't know if like you can enjoy it and control it like via con Dios. Like, that's not my experience in life. Like, if I can enjoy it, I can't control it. And if I can control it, I can't enjoy it. So
We
here we
got to
are.
enjoy. We got to. It's for enjoyment. Food is for enjoyment
It
as well as
is.
for nourishment. And I think we've kind of lost track of that a little bit. And even to the point of, in some cases, we can get into this how we're contaminating food so that it's
Yeah.
not as enjoyable, just so that it's quote unquote more healthy.
Well, I was just thinking that, you know, people protect their substance.
Mm,
So I think, you know, threat is a function of fear, right? Like people find what we're saying to be threatening because, and listen, I mean, I am a recovering addict on many levels. And
mhm.
my ultimate truth has always been that when I have made the bold step of taking action on either lessening or whatever, or focusing more on the thing that I know is better for me, the outcomes are unbelievable. Let's just talk through some of the research that is you have, and you're just so smart about what the sugar is doing to our kids. Let's just get a little clear on the problem before we start talking solutions. Because a lot of people will be able to get that dissonance. Oh, come on, it's not that bad. It's just Christmas. It's just this. It's just that.
Yeah, so really, those typically what we're seeing is that most people are kind of focusing on the weight gain as the issue,
Mm,
and but sugar has so many other effects beyond weight gain,
yeah.
in the short term and the long term. So by short term, I mean acute effects,
Mm,
and most parents have taken their kids to a birthday party and experienced the aftermath.
yeah.
The kids bouncing, that's sugar. That's the
Yeah.
effects of sugar on kids' bodies, going from bouncing off the wall 1 minute to rolling around the floor the next minute. That's sugar in action.
Mhm.
Sugar highs and sugar lows.
Yeah. Sugar highs and sugar lows. What about
Uh,
that school performance one? I love that one. That always sticks with me.
yeah, well, there's not been that many studies, but there was that one big study we quote in the book that's from Australia, several thousand children. It's a cross-sectional study, so it's a correlation. It's not cause and effect, but it's a pretty clear suggestion of higher kids with higher consumption habitually of sugars and sugary beverages just didn't perform as well on
Mm,
test scores.
wow.
And if you couple that with more detailed mechanistic studies from animal models, and we can't. People always say, "Well, what's the mechanism? Prove it's a cause and effect," and it's really hard to do that in
It's
people.
really hard to do that. Food too,
So
right?
we have to couple it with mechanistic studies. And if you look at the mechanistic studies in animal models, sugar disrupts brain development. It causes inflammation in the brain. It disrupts memory impairment, specifically in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain related to memory and learning. So
Mm,
we can put all those pieces of the puzzle together and come up with a story.
yeah.
And
Well, I don't know. I don't think high doses of sugar is really good for, or especially processed sugar, is good for anybody, right?
well, it is all about the dose and the amount.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I was kind of reflecting. I just came back from France. I
Hmm.
was only there for 3 days, but I did get my fair share of enjoyment of food in France,
Yeah.
and at various patisseries. And what I noticed pretty strikingly is that if you walk into a patisserie, you're struck by the beauty and
Yeah. It is
you know,
beautiful. Hmm.
it looks beautiful. You got to try it. You do try, and it tastes great, and it's just less sweet.
Mm,
And so I think that the problem here is just we are just over sugaring stuff, over
yeah.
sweetening stuff, and
Yeah.
the food
Yeah.
industry does that. The grocery stores do that, and if you compare like a Thanksgiving is coming up, so if you compare like a homemade pumpkin pie with a store-bought pumpkin pie,
Yeah.
store-bought pumpkin pie is always going to have more sugar. Your homemade pumpkin pie, you can even cut the sugar back more
Huh. To
and
make it
still
more, or like
make it
more
more
original
taste of more original and more tasting of, guess what, pumpkin.
pumpkin.
Yeah, like store-bought
How
pumpkin pie,
original.
does it actually taste of pumpkin, or you just get this like overwhelming
Well,
like
you just get a
sweetness?
high. I mean, you
You get
just
a
get a
sugar high.
high. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is,
So my
you know what I was thinking about when you were saying that? I was thinking of me. I was thinking, my God, kids love sugar. It's like, it's the funniest situation, but they love those like dots where, those dippers where you put like the
mm,
big, like thing of sugar into the thing of sugar and then you put it on your tongue and
mm,
it
mm.
overwhelms me to know it. But I think what you're saying is true, which is thinking about dosing and intensity is a really great way to say that. Talk me through this Halloween suggestion of yours, mostly because I think genius. My friend Jay has
Hmm.
instituted in his family. I need to tell you, he has like a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. So he's very lucky, but it is in that family system.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. It's a switch witch. So we in our
Switch
house
witch. How
we
cute is
yeah
that? The
it's
switch
super cute.
witch.
We had the switch witch in our house long before I wrote Sugarproof. So I don't know exactly where it came from. It was just
Mm.
something that we always did in our house
Michael, you're
because
such a good scientist. You know, most people would just take, you're like, I don't know who I should be citing here on the switch witch.
yeah. Well, yeah, I just don't want to like,
I get it.
somebody
Don't step
invented
on
it
anyone's
somewhere.
feet. It's the science.
Yeah.
That's not the way, our country really works anymore, but you're
But
wonderful.
it's kind of like the tooth fairy for Halloween, right? The tooth fairy comes at night and takes away the tooth that fell out and leaves a magic coin or a little present or something. It's this exact same principle, except it's specific to Halloween and Halloween candy. So
Right.
kids can enjoy the fun of Halloween because it is fun.
It's so
It's just
fun.
super fun. I mean, I love my kids are grown up, but I still love to stay home and see all the little kids come to the door.
It's even the older you get, the cuter it is, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So like why ruin that fun and say, oh, I don't have any candy or you shouldn't be collecting all that candy because it's collecting the candy is one thing, and then so okay, you've got all that candy. How can we?
Well, I think you're also you're demonizing food in that moment. And I think
Mhm.
that's not why, and you're also making your kid feel different. That
Yeah.
happened to me when I was a kid. My mom had all this special food for me and blah, 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 blah. And it just had me sneaking food.
Okay, well, I
Do it.
don't. My wife buys the Halloween candy. So every year it's like, how many bags of Halloween candy should we buy? Because we live in this knoll, it's a circle, it's like super
Oh,
crowded,
yeah,
and
that's
we
a
always
Halloween.
run it.
Yeah, that's a big
It's like,
Halloween place. Yeah.
so, I always say, well, think of a number and subtract two or three. Like, if you were going to buy 12 bags, buy 10 bags. So at least you've like, diminished the load a little bit
Right.
somewhere. So that's kind of how I think of it. Some along the way, as long as we can like shed sugar somewhere along the way without ruining the fun, I think
What do
that's
you guys just get
okay.
normal candy? I do that too. I get normal candy. I don't litigate
Well,
that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't want to
I've
be the person that gets raisins and also raisins. Anyway. So the switch witch, so your kids get to decide if they want to engage
yeah,
with the switch witch.
yeah. So your kids come home with a bucket full of candy, and you say, well, you're probably not going to eat all that. The switch witch can take some of it and exchange it for presents. So choose however many bits of candy. I don't know. You don't need to put a
Love
number
it.
on it. Whatever you know,
I
10
love
bits,
it.
20 bits, whatever is good for you or your kid. Let them choose a number. I mean, maybe
Mhm.
they'll surprise you and say, oh, well, I want
All
these
my
10
candy,
bits.
right?
And you're like, okay, take those 10 and we're going to give the rest to the Switch Witch. And Switch Witch is going to come and take away the candy and exchange
Exchange it.
for
It's
a
it is.
little
It's I
a
think
little
it is
present.
so if you have young kids, especially if you have young kids, gosh, what a great way, what a great ritual to start for Halloween. I just love it so much. So then we have like all these big
I guess we're getting we need I should invent something for Easter, right?
well,
We
I
have
think
the
we should
Easter.
this is my big question because I feel
Yeah.
like Hanukkah and Christmas, I would
Mm,
say might be worse only
yeah.
because it's so much decadence of candy everywhere and cakes and this and this and it's like how do you navigate that with kids
Mm.
or with our inner child?
Yeah, it's not easy, and it is it's my favorite time of year. I mean, I love cookies, pies, and cakes.
Mm,
I mean, I would have to say that's kind of my one of my weak spots.
yeah.
So I would say if you try to make it if you can, because that's going to be a win right there, right?
Mm.
Avoid the commercial, and then if you are making it,
But that's a big one. So really by making it yourself, you are decreasing the harm of what this substance is doing to your body and your child's body. I love that.
And in general, it's probably going to be healthier because you're going to choose the ingredients. It's not going to
Right.
be full of fillers and preservatives
Yeah.
and
And salt and fat.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so you know exactly what goes in it. You can choose if you want it to be organic or not organic. And here's the other big one. You can look at the recipe and the recipe says a cup of sugar, and you can say, I'm going to use 3/4 of a cup of sugar.
Right.
And so you've cut the sugar load by 25%. You've
Yeah.
already probably halved it by not
Making
getting
it
the
home.
commercial,
I
or
love
or
that.
mix it up, mix it up. So maybe you're not going to make all the pies, but make some of it.
I spend a lot of time with Michael, if you're listening, and this particular suggestion, I think I mean, first of all, I think I'm sad that it's not intuitive to us, because the thing that's actually changed in my godchildren's home is that was cereal. You
Mm,
taught me that the last time you were on the podcast, and they have, I mean, you said half healthy Cheerios, half honey nut Cheerios. And so we've been doing that a lot, and I swear I thought, because I'm the most cynical of all,
mm,
and not a peep.
yeah,
Isn't that amazing? Not a peep.
yeah,
So
and
taking
yeah,
half the sugar out works, combining sort of a lower sugar and if you're giving your kids high sugar things, combining it with a little bit of low sugar things. These are like real harm reduction moves. So
yeah. If your
love that
kids
one.
are, yeah, I mean, just for those who are listening, so if your kids are, loving Fruit Loops, for example, you can
Who doesn't
take
love
the Fruit Loops and mix it with just some regular basic O's or whatever
it? Yeah.
without added sugar. Make your own little mixture, and then kind of gradually work towards trying to get them down to the regular O's and just throw in a handful of
Mm.
O's, well, of the cheery
Of Fruit Loops. Yeah.
of the Fruit Loops, so they get a little bit of it. And like you said with your godchild, I mean, they're really not going to notice because they don't really care if it's a whole bowl or just some Fruit Loops.
Right. Yeah. No, no. And I think even,
And they're going to like they probably even like that process of mixing it all up and making
no,
their
I
own
think
little
that's a really, yeah, I think
concoction.
that the focus you have on self-involvement, which I want to get into a little bit. So when you're thinking about Christmas and holidays, so number one is, and would you involve your children in the cooking where you're taking half the sugar out of the recipe?
Well, you definitely want to try and involve your children as much as possible, just in the general process. Like,
Right.
okay, what kind of pie are we gonna cook? You want to help? I know, again, that's going to be age dependent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they need to be involved, but they could be involved with that decision making process.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And then
with
what
them in
about
that.
all the candy everywhere and all the cookies, and how can we navigate that with our kids?
Yeah, I mean, same kind of thing. Like again, like commercial cookies versus homemade cookies.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, I mean, you might not imagine yourself having time to make everything, but make some of them. So you mix it up a little bit, and then within that, in Sugarproof, we do have some recipes that have no added sugar. So I mean,
Right.
it's not like we're saying, okay, you can only have the no added sugar cookies, but if you have like 3 or 4 different types of cookies, and one of them is no added sugar made at home, then that's a win. Again, anything you can do to slide down on the sugar is a win.
Do you suggest, or is there any data that supports like making agreements before you get there about how many pieces of candy you'll have, or how much, like, is there any data that supports that those kinds of agreements work, or it just helps you sneak food?
Food rules in general work. There are some studies that show that if you stipulate food rules wherever they might be,
Mm-hmm.
for example, candy only at weekends, or
Mm.
3 desserts a week, or no soda in the house. I mean, studies have shown that those those households tend to have a healthier diet, and there's not the expected rebellion that you might
Wow.
expect. And in fact, kids perfectly, again, it might be age dependent,
Well, I actually
but
but I think even when you're saying none of them are abstinent, right? Like even when you're saying no soda in the house, you're not saying no soda. You're
mm,
saying, and I actually think that this is sometimes, and especially, a lot of people that are listening to my podcast struggle with their own eating disorder or disordered eating. And I think a lot of times what happens in parenting is that there's that boomerang effect that I was very heavily abstinently parented and that caused, and so I think, a lot of people were really heavily parented, really heavily ruled, and then they think, oh, I'm just going to have all food is good food kind of stuff. And I don't think food is made where kids can self-regulate in that way. Would you agree?
yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, that's kind of part of the goal of Sugarproof through the process, is to help them better self-regulate by going through some of these things. And that subtle rule, for example, no soda in the house, is going to kind of send a message at
Yeah.
some level.
Yep. I love that. I love, I think clarity is so key. What happens when they push the limit of the rule? Or I guess that rarely happens.
Um, and give me an example. What do you mean?
Just think of my God Kids Only, which is, 3 a week. And then it's like, well, could we just have 4 this week? Could we just have 5 this week?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
They're solid negotiators. I think they're going to
yeah.
be
Oh,
really
yeah.
helpful in our world as a whole.
Absolutely. I have one of my kids is like a brilliant negotiator.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Relentless, I would say.
relentless
Yeah.
negotiator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got your feet on the ground. But what do you do in those cases? I mean, do you have ideas about that or research?
Well, I mean, in most cases, parents are in control of what they're bringing into the house.
Mm,
So you can, you gotta take your wins where you can.
I love that.
Um, and we don't bring soda into the house, for example, but I do get comments every once in a while like, why can't we just be normal people and have soda?
What do you say? What do you say? Why can't we just be normal people and have soda?
You can. you can. I'm
But
just
what do
not.
you say to the kids when they say that? I'm super curious. I mean, I wouldn't, any child that I'm around knows how I feel about all of this, and they're really respectful about it. Actually, I actually think what you're saying is, or what I hear you saying is really interesting, which is that if you can hold the line in a way that's really authentic, you might not get that much pushback. I mean, I would imagine
Mhm.
if you're sitting there gorging on desserts and then telling your kids they need to limit desserts, that's going to be a tricky conversation, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think my answer would be like, it's just that based on my work that I
Mm,
do, I think it's just too much of an too much sugar for our bodies, kids or adults,
oh, I
and
love
I
it.
think
So
that
just the truth is what you're saying.
I guess so. I guess
I
that is
love
the
that.
truth.
I
In
love that.
my
So
opinion, yeah.
I love that. So talk us through, like, I love Sugarproof. Can you talk us through sort of the two options that we have when we read Sugarproof and the pros and cons of both of them? That 7-day versus 30-day. Is it 30-day? 7 days of
28,
no
28,
28,
28,
right?
but I don't know what. Sorry, helicopter
Mm.
flying overhead. Um,
How exciting.
yeah. Well, no, we live right under the flight path
Oh.
of helicopters going to the children's hospital down the road.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, prayers then.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, I mean, those aren't the only two options, but those are kind of the two main options. We have lots of like simple everyday hacks that we can talk about in a minute, but
Yeah.
the 7-day challenge is designed to kind of do a overall reset of sugar preferences, and the issue is, because we're exposed to all the sugar and eating a lot, we kind of have an increased liking and preference and craving for.
Yeah.
So the idea is if we can give it up just for 7 days, we can reset that. I mean, it might creep back,
Mm,
but we can reset it to a baseline, a healthier baseline level. Plus, research shows that even just after 7 days of sugar reduction, you can get benefits
yeah.
at, at, at the metabolic level. And certainly we've seen, which are harder to measure, but we do see observable differences
Wow.
in kids' behavior and temperament, energy levels, and so on,
Hmm.
even after the first few days. So it's not easy. You can't just show up on Monday morning and say, "Okay, folks, we're not going to have any more sugar this
Can
week."
you imagine?
Sorry. Yeah.
Can you
So
imagine?
it's a process. You have
Not unless you want to have
to,
rioters in your
yeah.
house.
So we have a plan to
Yep.
try and get the family on board, and along the way, you will figure out all the sources of added sugars, some of which you might not have known about,
Hmm.
and identify healthier alternatives like for ketchup or salad dressings or pasta sauce. Yogurts typically can be loaded with added sugars that aren't even necessary to
Yeah.
be there. Um,
I love these testimonials that you've been posting on Instagram with people saying that. I love the one that you just posted the other day where somebody was like, my kid ate something and said it was too sweet. And it was really powerful. I mean, that happens to me a lot if I'll have a bite of something every now and then. I'll be like, oh my God, is that? The other thing that happened to me the other day, which I'm sure you're just chomping at the bit to hear about, is I took an
tell me.
accidental sip of my friend's iced coffee. I thought it was mine.
Mm,
And I thought I was I'm a little extra, but I really thought I was going to die because it was full of sweet and low.
mm.
And you just published this paper about artificial sweetener, which is really all I ever want to talk about because I think it's the devil's greatest coup. And what did we learn about art? Tell us about artificial sweeteners in kids.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to hear your story. So, what was your reaction? Like, did it taste good or
Well,
bad
I haven't
or?
had artificial sweetener in a decade. It literally tasted toxic, like this sweet and low. But I had something with, I had another person's drink. I probably should watch the cups I'm picking up. I mean, this is the other moral of the story. But I also
Mm,
had a sip of something with like all the stevia in it. And that
mm,
actually tasted toxic to me too. It just tasted like, this is not a feeling word. So pardon me, but like it felt wrong. I was like, why am this is just like why this should not be going into my body. That's literally what I thought. The sweet and low was like a new level of toxic, but the stevia, I still was like, this is so disgusting. I tried athletic greens even. I was like, this is so
mm.
gross because it was so filled with artificial, well, it was
Yeah. I
fake
mean,
sugar.
that's kind of what I was referring to before at the beginning of our talk when I said that we've invented these ways to reduce sugar that in the end contaminates the food so that it doesn't taste as good, so we can't enjoy it. Because
Right.
you want to enjoy that coffee. That's why you bought it, paid good
Yeah,
money for it.
I did.
So
What about artificial sweeteners in our kids? Like, what are we finding in the research?
there's certainly less research in the kids, but we have no reason to believe that the effects are going to be any different in kids than in adults. But we do know from kids and adults a few things. That number one, studies show that the individuals who habitually consume sweeteners end up eating more calories and more sugar throughout the day.
Yep.
It backfires because the body's not dumb. It knows it's being tricked, but
Right.
it still responds. You can't. We're mimicking the sweetness, but we can't alter the downstream metabolic pathways.
Right.
So when the body triggers sweetness as coming in, aka sugar, it doesn't know the difference.
Mm,
It thinks there's sugar coming in, so what does it do? It takes sugar out of the bloodstream,
right.
but it wasn't there to begin with, was it? So what that happens is you get a reduction in blood sugar, and when your blood sugar goes low,
You're
you
like,
get
where's my
hungry.
food? Yep.
Where's my food? So a lot of people that I read about are like focused on, oh, stevia doesn't cause a sugar spike. Okay, doesn't cause a sugar spike, but it might cause a sugar crash.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting.
So
Yeah.
that's the first thing. Second thing is studies show they alter the gut microbiome.
Yeah. This is like my favorite one so far.
Because these compounds are designed not to be absorbed, so that we don't extract the calories from them. So if they're not absorbed, where do they go? They're like they can get stuck in the gut.
That makes me so sad for the gut.
The gut.
It's working so hard to like have a beautiful community to keep us healthy, and then we go and like make it poisoned with artificial sweetener because we're trying to hop the system,
I'm trying to hop
because it's just not sweet enough, when it's like we really could just work on our experience of sweet, which is like I think so much of what you guys are saying in that book.
And then my colleague Scott Konowski is at USC just published a paper. Haven't put out any messages about this one yet. Just came out last week. I mean, showing effects again on memory and impairment, direct impact on the hippocampus in the brain, which is part of the brain involved with memory. So it's not good for learning, memory.
Artificial sweeteners impacts the brain.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it in chapter 4 of the book. How it's not just sugars, but
I just hope my best friend Lauren's listening to this podcast right now.
Hey, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
What are you drinking?
How's the Splenda?
And then, you have these things, and then what you're saying is, well, they just don't taste that good.
Well, that's after 10 years of not having them. I'd like to share with the community, not to be the angel that I'm appearing to be, that I was the kind of girl who put 3 Splenda in a yogurt, in a plain Greek yogurt. And then one day I just was like, this can't be okay. This is many years ago. And I was like, I just knew it was impacting my eating disorder recovery with not eating sugar. Somehow I was able to separate that I wasn't eating sugar, but artificial sweetener is okay. This is why I literally think it's the devil's greatest coup, because we've been conditioned to think it's better for us than sugar. And like, there's no research that supports that. It really, like, even if I have a throat lozenge, I'm not having a sugar-free throat lozenge. I'll take a hit on having one with a little bit of honey, or, because of the artificial sweetener ones make me crazy. And, I'm not so well to begin with.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I think those are really, really great points.
Thank you.
And there's so many alternative products or alternative solutions, like you just said, for your throat lozenge. I mean, you'd be better off just taking a spoonful of honey for your throat than some lozenge that's loaded with some chemical. And this, the same is true for beverages. You got to be very careful. There's so many of these new beverages in the supermarket now that look great, and you're like,
I really wish that like the beverage community would focus on like climate change. This is a very often, like, the amount of new beverages that are coming out that we like don't need. I just wish we would all focus our attention on like changing the climate, or like, poverty.
well, obviously there's money to be made. I mean, then that's why, right? I mean, there must be huge profit margins on these things, and
one would hope.
One of my simplest solution, again, buy some sparkling water and an orange or a lemon. Squeeze the orange or the lemon into the sparkling water, and you have a pretty good beverage right there.
Yeah, and I really think when you involve the kids in it, when you have the kid squeezing, you really can make it fun. I didn't used to believe this with you. You and I used to really get into some things with it, but now I've practiced it, and
the more we can get kids involved.
You let a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old cut an orange up with you and then squeeze it in themselves. I mean,
you're sold, you're sold, then that's going to be their
choose which fruit they want to. I mean, forget it.
Yeah. So however much you can involve kids, even if it's very basic, small things to start with,
Yeah.
even if it's choosing what to make,
Oh, I love that.
it's still a good place to start.
Yeah. And I think we forget, I think these, I always say, like, you never leave the basics. You never need to go back to the basics. And I think the holidays can feel so overwhelming, which is like, how am I going to control my kids? And it's like, well, like, let's empower them first. Let's let them make decisions on how many they're going to have. Let's let them make
Mm,
decisions on what we're going to bring and cook. Let's let them help in the cooking. I mean, there's actually a lot of, self-determining options that you can empower kids to not be stuffing their faces with, things that are going to poison
mm,
their liver, like juice.
mm,
No one loves to talk about juice more than me. Nobody.
juice.
I know.
Mm.
I know my godson will call me and he'll be drinking juice, be like, look what I have. And I'll say, your morning beer. There it is. Because that's what I
Yeah,
learned from the Sugarproof gang.
yeah,
Should we say it? Juice is alcohol without the buzz, goes right to your liver, right, friend?
that is about right. Yep, it's just a high dose of fructose, which is the main sugar in fruit. And again, it's dose dependent, so you're not going to get this dose from eating an apple.
Right.
It's not only dose dependent, but it's the rate at which it's absorbed.
Right. It's fiber dependent.
And so when you eat the apple with the fiber, it's going to slow down the absorption. When you drink the juice without the fiber, it's a direct path to the liver.
Yeah.
There's
I think,
only
and
one
that's why
way.
kids like it so much.
It's a one-way street to the liver,
Mm,
um,
I
and the
know.
liver can.
I'm so overtaken at the diseases that kids are getting that are sugar related. It's really overwhelming to me, though not our topic today, just another story for another time. So I
Absolutely.
love all of these suggestions that we have for the holidays. I wish we could make like a Christmas switch witch. I love it. I think you should make an Easter bunny switch witch. Switch witch is genius.
Mm.
Whoever decided to come up with it.
Well, it happens to be poetically quite beautiful too.
Yeah, but I do think
So,
creating rituals around things that aren't food is
mm,
great. And I love this idea of saying, you can have the chocolate or you can have this and making it
hmm
more less appealing to be eating sugar for the whole, you know, Hanukkah party.
mm.
Lots of guilt.
Yeah, what would be the anecdote to the Easter Bunny? The Easter Bunny delivers all the candy, so who's going to come get it?
Um, what eats bunnies? Like a like a puppy? My puppy likes to chase bunnies all day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
To
I
think
don't
about that one.
We'll think about it. Yeah, 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 I love it.
There's a challenge for your
There
listeners.
you go. What is
Yes.
going to be your alternative for Christmas? What are the animals or objects you're going to use to have your switch? We are so interested. And then
Mm,
we'll make little memes about it. Well, listen, I always love having you. I think it's so useful. I love the book Sugarproof. I tell everybody to read it. I think it is the most balanced, like useful, basic and simple way that you can really impact your kids' taste buds and I think long-term
mm.
resilience. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you're my friend.
Anytime. Happy to do this
Hey,
however many
well, we
times we
do it.
need
You
to
know,
do it.
you really come on the show quarterly. I just love having you around. Thank
Happy
you,
to do that. Yeah.
and happy
Lovely to see
holidays,
you.
friend.
You too. Take care. Be well.
You too.